Good morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. I am talking about why your boundaries aren't sticking. You're trying all the things, you've read the books, you've watched the videos, you've read the blogs, and you're like, I'm trying to set boundaries with my teenager, but it's not working. This is such a frustrating thing that I hear from parents so often, so very often. So I thought, okay, let's dig in here. Let's cover this just a little bit more in detail because it's a tricky one. It's a super tricky one. If you were raised like me, you probably have first of all, a context or an experience of boundaries that is actually not that workable. Might not even be true. So there's that. There's what did you learn about boundaries? And then we've got to talk about what boundaries actually are so we can get into the muck about this, okay? So thanks for joining me. Let's dig in. My name is Allie Payne. I'm a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach, one of the only 70 people in Canada to hold both certifications. I was a very troubled teen. And I've spent the last 16 years empowering parents to end the painful disconnection and emotional blowups and stressful silences to build relationships based on trust and mutual respect with genuine connection. If that sounds like something you're looking for, you are in the right place. Okay, so let's jump in here. Now, I'm going to start off with this. I'm going to start off with these 5 things, okay? I'm just looking at my laptop because I got notes here. There's 5 basic reasons why your boundaries are probably not working, okay? Number 1, lack of knowledge. And this is not because you are not intelligent. No. I did not say that. It's because the way you were raised to believe what a boundary is not actually what a boundary is. Okay? So I'm gonna uncover that. Number 2, fear of conflict. If you're like me, you were raised that conflict is very painful, physically or emotionally. And so your emotion system, your psyche will do whatever it takes to avoid the conflict. Oh, thank you so much. That's a great compliment. Thank you. So your psyche is constantly trying to avoid conflict, and that you might have a story that setting a boundary is going to ignite conflict with your teen. So you're avoiding it, right? Okay. Number 3, which is kind of the backside of number 2, is desire to be liked. Can we just face it already? We want our teenagers to love us. And they used to when they were a child. They loved us when they were a child, and now we can't seem to do anything right, and they find us annoying. They literally cannot wait to get away from us. They're constantly trying to escape our conversations, time together, whatever. And so we become invested in our teenager liking us because it feels good, and it also feels really heartbreaking and terrifying when we think our teenager doesn't like us. Like that's literally very painful. So we don't set boundaries, okay? So that's number 3. So number 4 is parenting styles, okay? There's all different kinds of parenting styles, just like there is number of parents and relationships with teens. It's like infinite, right? So different parenting styles approach parenting differently. And also, if you're like me, you and I was raised in a very strict authoritarian parenting style, which was parenting of the day. No shame or blame going on here. Okay? It was parenting of the day based on psychology that actually was developed in the 1920s and wasn't disproven as really the best way until like the 1950s. So if that's where your grandparents were raised, that's probably how your parents were raised. And so that's probably how you were raised. So authoritarian parenting was parenting of the day. And so because we only know one way, and we like, I just want it to be different. I don't want it to be like how I grew up. So what we end up doing because we don't have, back to number one, the correct knowledge, because nobody's teaching us this. No, nobody's teaching it. We go from authoritarian and we swing to the other side of permissive. Because if you only know vanilla, you go to chocolate, or if you only go to black, you go to white, or if you only, like, what we tend to do in your courageous effort to change your family dynamic and the relationship you have with your teen is that you go from one extreme over to the other. And that's normal. That's totally normal. It's like saying, I don't like this, so I'm going to go over here. So permissive parenting is the opposite. Authoritarian parenting and permissive parenting. Permissive parenting is like the opposite. And if you're trying to not do the authoritarian and you end up over in permissive, it's very hard to set boundaries from that place as well. It's very, very challenging. And it leads to more confusion. And unfortunately for you as a caring, courageous parent, it leads to more frustration because you're like, well, I knew I didn't want this or I've trying this and this didn't work, authoritarian parenting. And so you swing over, which takes a lot of courage. Seriously, a lot of courage to make a kind of change like that. And then you end up over in permissive parenting and then even more frustrated because that's not working either. And neither one, authoritarian or permissive, is building more respect with your teenager. When it's authoritarian, they don't respect you. So then you go to permissive and then they're still not respecting you. And it's like, where is the middle ground? How come I can't make this work? Does that sound... Yes. Okay. You can relate. Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'm just going to say you are not alone, my friend. You are not alone. Okay. So, what I want to do is tell a little bit of a story because I've spoken to a couple parents this week already who have, it's like I'm in your house. I might be, I can't say. I've spoken to a couple parents this week who it's difficult for me to describe because I feel it so deeply. The sense of defeat, that deep hopelessness of defeat that these gorgeous, courageous parents okay. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love that I get to talk to people who also watch my videos. Like, it's so cool. The sense of defeat, on their face when I see them on Zoom, if I'm, doing a one-on-one, a consult or something. And I can hear that in their voice, in your voice. It's heartbreaking to me because I know it has nothing to do with how deeply you love your child. Nothing to do with that. Never question that for a second. That so much of it is that you yourself were not set up to succeed at this job because there's no training for it. So here you are attempting your very best to raise another human being in a role. There's no training and you're making it up as you go. And then like doing this spaghetti method of like throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. And then that lack of consistency creates like a whole other issue. And in the meantime, you are thinking, well, either my teenager is the spawn of Satan, they're lazy. And like I talked to a parent the other day who oh my gosh, I wanted to go through the screen and just lift them up and hug them and hold them. They literally are like at a complete loss with their two teens and believing these two teens they're a lost cause. They are completely lazy and irresponsible because no amount of boundaries zero amount of boundaries, this many, zero amount of boundaries seems to get, pardon me, but like get their ass moving, right? And I hear about this all the time. So I want to talk about this. Okay. So let's break this down a little bit. This is where and I take responsibility. I actually take responsibility for some of this because I think in attempting to have parents like you, move away from authoritarian parenting, because we now have decades of research and psychology data that shows the impact that has on your relationship with your teen and sometimes the trauma caused, that my message may not have been well received and ended up being perceived as I am touting permissive parenting. Don't set boundaries. Don't be mean to your teen. Treat them with respect. And so what you hear, because if you don't have a relative experience of anything other than authoritarian, and then you hear some crazy crack lady on the internet like me saying, don't do authoritarian parenting, and I'm spouting all the data that says why you shouldn't do it, you will probably do the same thing. You'll be like, well, Alice said to go to permissive parenting, like go over here. I totally get that. Because if you don't have an experience of anything in the middle, you're going to swing to the other direction. Okay. And this is why boundaries aren't working. So I take responsibility for my role in that, and I am going to start undoing it. So what I am talking about is also based on science and research. Everything I do is backed by science and research, because I'm not going to I do spew a lot of hot air, but if I'm going to come on here, I want it to be backed in information. Is what I'm talking about is going from the authoritarian parenting that you and I were raised in, not all the way over to permissive. Nope. We are going to make a little pit stop. In fact, we're going to permanently camp out in the middle, which is, I just lost the words for it. Wow. Respectful parenting. Okay. It's respectful parenting, not respect of your teen at the cost of respect for you. No. Okay. Yeah. And how do you land? Yes. The reality is there's no way that what you're trying to do is going to land if you don't have authentic connections. So well said, Kristen. Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the ways of building that authentic connection, is rather than going from authoritarian to passive, we're going to make a pit stop, and we're going to plant ourselves. Okay. In respectful parenting. Okay. So let's go back to boundaries for just one sec. Okay. Because oh gosh, the look on these parents' faces, it's just enough to break my heart. So I talked to some parents this week who were saying no, you don't understand, Allie. I have tried setting boundaries. We have tried every kind of boundary known to man. We have made the basic requests, like you talk about. We've made the basic requests. We have clearly requested, what do we want done? Specifically, what do we want done? When does it need to be done by? And then it's never getting done. It just, they never do it. They never do it. Yes, I love that, Kristen. Our brains are wired for pendulum swing. And it's often in that pendulum swing of going from one extreme to another that we find, well, this doesn't work and this doesn't work. And then the pendulum has to come down. The problem is, again, there's really not, well, more so now there's available training for this, just saying. But historically, parenting is something you're just supposed to know how to do, and you're supposed to figure it out. And it sets everybody up for failure, including future generations, which I think is a bunch of bananas. So I'm not going to go there. Okay. So you've done all the boundary setting. Okay. You are using clear requests. Exactly what do you want to get done, and when do you need it done by, or when does that chore need to be done by? And then you're leaving it alone. Don't do all the nagging and reminding, and you're leaving it alone, and it's still not getting done. So there's a couple things I think we need to pull apart here. So first of all, authoritarian parenting comes from a perspective of control, right? It's about control, and there's a misconception I can't say that enough. There's a misconception, because it's not true, that control, you are to be in control and have absolute authority as a parent, or you're a crappy parent. Okay? Also not true. The other big misconception that lives over in authoritarian parenting, which is probably, again, how you and I were raised, I know it's how I was raised, is that compliance equals respect. So as long as you believe compliance equals respect, it's going to be very hard for you to make a move into the middle ground, right? Yes, Kristen, yes. So as long as you believe compliance equals respect, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand what the science, the research shows, what a boundary actually is, in order to enjoy the benefits of that with your teenager. So that's over here in authoritarian. Compliance is not respect. I'm going to say that again. Compliance can be respect. It can be. But compliance, control for the purpose of eliciting compliance, is not respect. Control used to create compliance is fear-based. You are parenting from fear, from a fear of losing control or fear of your authority being questioned, and your child is only doing what they do, complying, out of fear of what you might do if they don't. Fear is not a relationship. Fear is not authentic connection. It's not genuine connection. It's not mutual respect. That fear doesn't work. So we need to, that's the number one belief that I notice that's in the way for parents, is that compliance is not respect. Okay? And if you believe that, totally cool. I did too. Okay? Again, zero judgment. I don't have space for the judgment game here. So now let's talk about respect. Because this is another thing that you and I, we were raised to believe that respect is demanded and commanded. And if you can't do that as a parent, who do you think you are? What do you mean you can't command respect from your children? You're obviously failing. We're not doing that. Yes, this will appear on my profile and on YouTube as soon as I'm done. Yes, thank you for asking. I'm glad you're here. So we need to redefine respect, okay? Respect is not demanded or commanded. That's authoritarian parenting again, okay? So let me just like read you a little definition here of respect. A feeling of deep admiration for someone, their abilities, their qualities, or achievements, okay? A regard for someone's feelings, wishes, and rights. Deep admiration, or have regard for someone's feelings. Okay, so that's respect. So control, inherently, by definition, control is not respect. Like, because control has no regard for someone's feelings. Respect has regard for their feelings. So control is not respect. Okay, so I hope we've just like debunked that. Okay. So back to when we make the swing from authoritarian over to permissive, what ends up happening, because crazy crack internet ladies like me are out there talking about how a boundary is a tool to increase respect. And thanks so much in part to Dr. Brené Brown's work, Dr. John and Julie Gottman, Dr. Daniel Siegel, there's like so many others. Boundaries are a tool to increase respect. Now, if you're like me, you're like, ooh, great, I'm going to use boundaries because I need my kids to respect me more. But that goes right back to control is not respect. So do you see how based on past generations and how we were raised, just setting a boundary alone is challenging so many levels of thinking that we've had? So many levels of thinking. So a boundary, my definition, Allie Payne, my definition, feel free to retweet this. My definition of a boundary is that it is an emotional tool at a relational level. Okay? It's an emotional currency at a relational level. So what I'm saying by that is, based on the definition of respect as well, it had a lot to do with feelings, right? Deep admiration. Boundaries are really acknowledging feelings, okay? But then it's going to be, the feeling is interpreted and enacted in the behavior in which you and I relate. We relate at an emotional level, but how we treat each other, our behavior with each other, says, like, what I choose to do with those feelings says a lot as well. So boundaries are an emotional currency, an emotional tool at a relational level. Control is only at a behavioral level, because control in of itself does not have regard for feelings, okay? Respect is all about feelings. The reason boundaries work and the reason they feel hard is because they require, as Kristen said, that authentic connection, okay? Genuine respect and connection at an emotional level in order to translate to respectful behavior, okay? Now, let's swing over to the permissive side, and this is why they don't work, and this is what was coming up in my calls with parents this week. And by the way, I don't do these videos to now publicly shame the parents that I've spoken to. I just want to make that really clear. When I notice themes coming up with parents that I speak to, I figure let's make the message more public. My intention is not to shame anyone that I have spoken to who's feeling challenged by this, okay? So if we swing over to the permissive side, because I keep saying boundaries build respect. You've got to have boundaries to build respect. From the permissive side of parenting, you may still be parenting from a fear of conflict, that setting a boundary, now your teenager won't like you, which is hard enough on a daily basis anyway, or your teenager is going to be even more explosive and push back. And if you have a very anxious, unsettling experience of conflict, having grown up in authoritarian parenting, then which is also based on fear, the need for control is based on fear. Permissive parenting is also based on fear, but it's fear of conflict. So one is fear required for control. One is fear to avoid conflict. Both sides are fear, okay? So if you're coming from a permissive perspective, you're probably like, well, I'm trying to set these boundaries, but and so now you're listening to like crazy lady like me is like, but you have to like hear your teenager's feelings. Like you've got to have an open, honest conversation first to hear your teenager's feelings. Doesn't mean you need to agree with them. Doesn't even mean you necessarily need to change your mind. But you got to be willing to have that open conversation to hear your teenager's feelings in order to set a boundary. Because if you don't hear their feelings and what they believe and what they value about something, you're back to control, because control is void of caring about feelings. Respect is inclusive of feelings. Okay? So you're trying to set boundaries from a permissive perspective. You are now likely putting wait, I'm going to go back. If you're in the authoritarian parenting, you're putting your needs above your teenagers. okay, which isn't necessarily a bad thing until it is, okay? If you're over on the permissive side of parenting, you're putting your teenager's needs way above yours. So I just want to build that contrast for you to show you why neither one really works and why I'm talking about that sweet spot, that middle ground of respectful parenting, where both of your emotional needs are equal. As human beings, I am not talking about authority. So if this is like really pushing all your buttons of anxiety, your fear of losing control, which is the definition of anxiety, that's not what I'm talking about. As human beings, your emotional needs are the same. They both have equal value, and that's the middle ground. So setting a boundary requires you to hear your teenager's feelings. Again, don't need to agree with them. You don't need to placate them. And you also have feelings and thoughts about whatever boundary you're trying to set, okay? And where most parents, in my experience, at least recently, are getting caught kind of hooked up in this whole thing is that, because I also go on and saying like, stop having so many expectations of your teens. Stop having expectations. And I'm probably not really clear about that. An expectation is in a primary relationship. An expectation is, I need you to do, be, or say certain things for me to feel a certain way. That is not taking responsibility for your feelings. So I had an expectation my teenagers were going to be high achievers because it makes me feel better. So I just needed my teenagers to be high achievers so I felt better about myself. So I had expectations, unspoken expectations. Now, expectations are a version of control. I need you to do, be, say certain things so that I feel better about myself and I don't have to feel anxious and feel like I'm losing control. And that because we're also taught back in previous generations that children are an extension of ourselves, and therefore how our children is in this world is defining my worth and value as a human being. And if that feels questioned, then I am really out of sorts. So expectations come from often unspoken. They come from a need for control. They come from a need for someone else to caretake my emotional experience. You create your experience. You create it. You create it. And this is where I'm getting to this, but this is where boundaries are going off the rails here. Okay. So you're going from authoritarian and you're swinging over to a bit too far from permissive because you're hearing about like this new way of parenting and including respect and hearing your child and making room for their feelings. And in the process, you are now not respecting yourself. You're no longer respecting yourself. Oh, I'm so glad this is landing for you. Yes. So I love your point though about collaboration. Can we talk about that for a second? Rather than this middle ground of parenting, respectful parenting, being called collaborative, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of calling it collaborative because it leads to an assumption that your child has equal authority. They do not. Your teenager does not have equal authority in the relationship. Their emotions and feelings have equal weight as yours does as a human being, okay? Collaboration, I would rather frame this as open, honest conversation. It's the conversation that needs to happen. It's not the collaboration, because I think that the mentality of collaboration is what swings people over into this permissive parenting and gets them stuck in this place where now their teenager is lazy, entitled, and like walking all over them. Okay? It is totally natural to put your child above your own, but that also is based on previous parenting models where we've seen as moral, more honorable. You're just a better parent if you sacrifice yourself every single day, become nobody than other the role you fill, deny, abandon, and suppress yourself, because then you are a martyr mom and there's nothing higher. Okay, so that's all bullshit. So we're just gonna, because when you abandon yourself for your teenager's needs, what you are teaching them is that their next partner is required to abandon themselves to make them happy. So you are literally setting every single relationship up they have to fail. So we need to stop that now. Dial it right back. We're going to stop that. Okay? How you treat your teen is teaching them how to set up a healthy relationship. So, rather than collaborative parenting, and I'm cautious of this because I do think it is, oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you for being here. I do think it is important to have the conversation about respectful limits, that boundaries, right, that you're trying to put in your house. Conversation where you listen as much as you talk, or even listen more than you talk, okay? Collaboration is a slippery slope because it can end up having you think your teenager has equal authority. They don't. Okay, so back to these stories, right? These parents, so they're like, we're setting boundaries, we're setting boundaries. It's not working. Our teenagers are so entitled. We've this particular situation, we've gone overboard, in caretaking our kids for so long that now we're setting boundaries and they literally don't care. Here's where these gorgeous parents went to, as I'm talking about. They were making requests, clear, concise requests about the task to be done, making sure their teenager understood what that actually meant, because sometimes it goes off the rails right there. Putting it as time bound, when does it need to be done? And then they were backing away to give their teenager agency and autonomy to step into that. Because if you don't do that, your teenager's just never going to do it anyway. Okay. And then the task isn't getting done. And they're saying, like, basically, if we don't stand over them and then say, like, are you doing it? Are you doing it? Are you doing it? It never gets done. And there's a task perspective, but now I also want to talk to you really quick about the getting up for school. Put a hell yeah in the comments if this sounds familiar. So they live in an area where there's not a lot of buses, and if the parents do not drive their teenager to school, their teenager won't get them there for the day. Okay, so these parents are waking their teenager up 4 and 5 times in order to make sure they're on time. Okay, so this is why boundaries go off the rails, because you've gone from control, you don't want to be controlling, you want to have a different experience, but you end up over here, you forget to make the pit stop in the middle at the respectful parenting, and it is misunderstood. And of course, it's misunderstood because we don't have an experience of respectful parenting. So we just you went right through it over to permissive parenting, where your words don't match your actions. If you get one thing out of this video, I want you to listen to that. Your words do not match your actions. So your teenager, stop listening to you because you're saying one thing. You've got to get up on time. You're late every morning. What are you going to do about it? You need to change your behavior. You need to change your behavior. But every morning you go in and you wake them up 5 times to make sure they're on school on time. So you're telling your teenager to take ownership of their behavior, but you keep taking ownership of the behavior. You see, when you set a boundary, you are not delegating. Did you know that delegating means that the ownership of the task is still yours? You're just renting it out. Setting a boundary is not delegating. You are not renting out a task to your teen. You are giving it to them. You are letting go of ownership and you are giving it to them. Because as a parent, our role is to eventually give our children full ownership of tasks. At first we delegate, sure. But if you are always the backstop for your teenager, your words don't match your actions. So in this case with these parents about waking their teenager up, I said, then stop waking them up. but then they won't go to school because they don't care. Yep. Natural consequences. They need to call the school every day and tell them why they're not there. Now, I understand in the United States, there are some states that there's truancy and that has other consequences to it. I get that. I've also worked with parents who have allowed that to happen and their child has had to pay the fine. So it's different in Canada than it is in the United States. I understand that in some states, okay? But if you are you're going to nag your teenager trying to set a boundary, but then you keep doing what you're doing, your teenager won't change if you don't change. Nothing changes if you don't change. So I get and totally admire and respect your want to install greater respect in your relationship by using a studied technique called boundaries. But boundaries are where you have conversation, where you listen more than you talk to hear feelings around it. Because the definition of a boundary is this is Prentice Hemphill quote, a boundary is a place where I simultaneously love and respect myself and you. Now, sometimes between parents and teens, that is different sides of the Grand Canyon. And that's as close as you're going to get. And that is because even though you've had the conversation to hear your teenager's feelings, because respect is inclusive of feelings, you and your feelings are equal. You are still in authority. You are still the parent. And this is why boundaries are weird, because you're not abdicating authority and just being like, well, my kid's in charge now. No, because that's fear of conflict. But you're also not doing you will do what I say, because that's authoritarian and full of control, which negates any feelings. That's why this messy middle is so messy. So for these parents, I said to them, look, they are not in a place where missing or late school is truancy. So I said, you need to stop waking them up. You tell them, I realize that I'm asking you to do something, but then I'm not stopping doing, I have never changed my behavior. So why would you start doing something differently if I've never stopped? I said, you go in and you wake them up one time, but you tell them this. You have to articulate this. Remember, conversation, not collaboration, conversation. You have to tell them this in advance. I'm going to wake you up once every morning. It's going to be at this time. You're going to get up or you're not. But here's what is going to happen, gorgeous teenager of mine. I will be in the driveway with the keys in the ignition, and that car is leaving the driveway at X time every single morning, non-negotiable. I got my coffee in hand. I am ready to take you to the school. If you are not in, if your gorgeous tush that I once used to wipe and change is not in that vehicle by that time, that car is not making a trip to your school. And you will call the school and tell them why you were late, and you will tell the school, and you will get whatever missed work you have. Now, parents also say, but they're going to fail, but then they'll fail because they don't care. They don't care right now because you are their success strategy. Why would they care if you currently are holding full responsibility of it for them? I wouldn't care. I would love to not care about cooking dinner every night. Literally. I wouldn't care if somebody just made dinner for me every night and it was sitting on a plate. I wouldn't care. No. And you'd be like, you've got to start making dinner. If you don't start making dinner, I'm exhausted. This is your job. You've got to start making dinner. And then every day at like 6 o'clock, I show up in the kitchen, but you keep making dinner. Why would I care? But then you say to me, well, I can't stop making dinner or you'll go hungry. Like you're just not going to eat. Really? Do you think? You think I'm just going to starve myself? Well, side note, old me would have, but that's not the point. If you don't stop being your teenager's success strategy, they will never build their own. And what we know about the human brain is that the executive function and coping strategies and critical thinking and strategic thinking is developed through failure. It is developed through failure. It's the same how you learn to walk. You crashed quite a few times. You got your balance all wrong. I mean, I hate to say, but you kind of sucked at walking at first. But look at what happened. When you practiced getting it wrong enough times, you got it right. And it is no different. That is how our brains develop. Is we learn to adjust, shift, and take ownership of things through trying and failing. You don't get to take care of everything for your teenager all the time, and they get you know where we end up here when that nagging and reminding, you're not setting a boundary, you're begging. That's not setting a boundary, that's begging. Begging your teenager to change. You're begging them to change when really they're not going to change unless you change. You are the one who is taking ownership of a task that is not yours. So they're like, well, I'm like, well, you gotta let it happen. But you don't drop them like it's hot and be like, well, you're a failure. No, you don't go to criticism and condemnation, because I can tell you where that's going to get you. That might be normal. Might be how you were raised. When you are stop delegating a task and you are giving your teenager ownership of the task, you can be part of them learning to take ownership. But they will never, ever start, not even a toe across the line, unless you start stepping back, my friend. And when they don't get it right, you let them fail. And this is what parents tell me all the time, is that, but if they don't do it, then I end up doing it. Well, then you are the one who is in the way of them learning to take ownership of the task. And that is permissive parenting. Controlling is authoritarian. You do what I do, or I'm going to and there's fear based there. Permissive is, well, I asked them to do it and they didn't, so I had to do it myself. Well, now who are you disrespecting? You see, permissive parenting is where you are all about respecting your teenager, but you forgot you are part of the respect equation. That's why it doesn't work. You deserve equal respect, as do they. So why are you rescuing them? When we know, science-based, that is how the brain learns. So I get parents who are like, I've taken your course, Allie, I've done the thing, and I don't understand. Like, we're asking and I said, you're not setting boundaries, you're begging. That's not a boundary, you're begging. And when you're begging, your words don't match your actions. You are disrespecting yourself every single day, and you're not letting them fail. So their brain's never developing the coping skills and the strategy to make it work. Now, when you're handing over the task, what you need to do is do two things. Not criticism and condemnation. Nope, because that teaches nothing. What you need to do is empathy and encouragement. This sucks. I missed school because it's your fault and you didn't wake me up. Yeah, that does suck. That's hard. I realize that I did that for you for a long time, and maybe I did it for too long, and that probably wasn't helpful. This must be hard to feel like it's all on your plate now. Now, am I agreeing? No. Am I taking ownership of my role in having set up the situation the way it was? Yes. But I'm not throwing myself under the bus either. Because I respect myself. And then you encourage and you say, you can do this. I will help you develop whatever strategy. You're not the strategy. Happy to help you develop a strategy. If you want to go get a different alarm clock, you want to go, okay? But you have got to stop being the strategy for success, because now your boundary becomes begging. Okay? I'm glad these examples are working. Okay, good. So when you actually, remember, delegating, the official definition of delegating is that you actually still own the task, but you're just renting it out. Stop doing that with your teenager. That is what's happening when they're a younger child and they are learning a task. You still own the task, but you're renting it to your child. When it comes to certain tasks now as a teenager, you're not delegating anymore. Stop it. You are giving up responsibility and ownership of that task, and you are handing it over to them. And yes, they're going to get it wrong. They're going to fail. They're not going to fail at life. That's catastrophizing. They're not going to fail at life like forever and be homeless and unemployable and live under a bridge. Stop it. They are learning, and our brains learn resilience, confidence, hopefulness by failure. So you, yes, playing the rescuer, if you've got a triangle, you're right. Absolutely, Adrian, not gonna work. No. That is, the rescuer is about managing your own anxiety of what's gonna happen in their relationship, or what's gonna happen if one person doesn't do it. And you're like, okay, so let's go back to, okay, but what if they don't take out the garbage? Or what if they don't clean the bathroom and we've got guests coming over? Great. Because as I talk to these gorgeous, courageous parents, and they're like, but we said clean the bathroom. Did you define what clean the bathroom means? I know that sounds ridiculous, but for the teen brain, they look at the bathroom and go, like, they don't know where to start, or they don't know what's most important. So you have to say cleaning the bathroom means this: replace the towels, clean out the toilet and wipe the toilet down, and then wipe the counter and the sink. Okay, this is what I used to tell my kids. And I used to say, I know a bathroom is clean is if I walk in the door and from my eye level, you know how you kind of see in the toilet, you know, there's like no lines, no like leftovers, know what I mean, in the toilet, okay? And the chrome on the sink is like polished, like it's shiny. To me, that's how I think a bathroom is clean, you know, and the towels are nice. So if you determine what does done even look like for your teen, you got to start there. Okay, then you go to, when do you want it done? And this is what these parents were telling me is, but we said we need it done by 4:00 on Sunday because we're having friends over, and they don't do it. I get that. Based on certain patterns that have been set up, your teenager may not do it because what they've been taught is what you say is not what you mean. So you're asking them to do something, but because you've been coming at this from a place of begging, which is disrespecting you, they won't do it. So does this happen overnight? Oh, sweet Jesus, no. No, it does not. It takes patience, a lot of patience, okay? So back to the bathroom example but we've got friends coming over. And I'm like, okay, then half an hour before the friends come over, because you don't nag and remind, you ask what you want them to do and when you want it done, and then you let it go. You back off. Because nagging and reminding will only, I promise you, they just won't do it. Because it's a natural psychological defense, actually, when anyone is nagging and reminding you to do something, to instantly push back and just not do it. So don't do it. But then if you get to within half an hour of when it needs to be done and it's not done, then you say to them, we are going to turn off the internet in the house. We're going to turn off the internet for 30 minutes so that we can get these chores done. But it's like a family game. Okay, half an hour, we're gonna do a quick tidy. If you guys can get that bathroom done like I asked, I'm gonna go do the kitchen, and we'll probably be done in 15 minutes. But let's just do, and you do it with them. That's collaborative. It's also in ADHD land called body doubling. Because if you're standing over them and saying, okay, well, we're gonna end the internet, for 30 minutes, now clean the effing bathroom like I asked you to. No, you're not a prison guard either. That's not fun. We don't need to do that either. So they're not going to do it right. But I said to these parents, so what happens if they don't do it? And they said, well, then we end up doing it. I'm like, no, see, because again, now you don't mean what you say. You're begging and you're rescuing. So it doesn't work. But our friends are coming over at 4:00. I'm like, great. The bathroom is getting done. Like RFN, it's getting done now, but you still have to be empathetic and encourage. I know this sucks. I know there's 100 things you'd rather be doing other than cleaning a bathroom. And you might not even understand how to clean a bathroom, so you absolutely don't want to do it. Totally get it. You go get the cloths in the cleaner. I'll go over a few quick tips, and I know you can do it. I know you can do it. You can do hard things. You can do things you hate. And so empathy and encouragement, because criticism and condemnation never works. It's shaming. Might be what you were raised with, okay? It doesn't work. So I hope this has been helpful for you today, because only the next step here is consistency. You need to stop begging. Make your words match your actions, and allow your teen to fail, because that's how they learn. Be encouraging and empathetic in their learning. That is how you get your teenager to respect your boundaries. If this is something that you're struggling with and it's creating more disconnection with you and your teenager, and you are like done, D-O-N-E, done, or you're feeling completely hopeless and you're pretty certain either you failed or your teenagers are going to be failures because you just, yeah. Yes, this will be posted on my feed immediately after this. Type boundary below this video, and I will send you a link to a free masterclass that I just created. I'm actually really proud of it. I just created a free masterclass. If you type boundary below this video, I'll send you the link for that free masterclass. I believe in you. I believe in you. And I know you can do this. And I want to say again, you are not failing. You are not bad. Your teenager's not a failure. There's no training for this. And so it's normal to have understood a bunch of these concepts and them to feel hard and chunky, and they're not working and frustrating, and it's creating more disrespect rather than respect. That's okay. You're in the normal bus. Okay? So thank you so much for being here today. Again, my name is Allie Payne. You can watch me here on Instagram or over on YouTube or on my Facebook page, Allie Payne. Comment boundary below and I'll get you that link to the free masterclass. Thanks everybody. Bye.